Hey guys, welcome back to another Underground Virtuosos video. My name is Paul, and I'm a violin viola teacher located here in San Diego, California. So today we're going to be talking about the part 3 of the left hand setup. Now, if you haven't seen part 1 or part 2 yet, I would strongly recommend you to pause this video and go check out those before you come back to this one. Alright, so for this video we're going to be focusing on the thumb, the roll of thumb, and also three different setups that might work for some of you if you are struggling to be able to comfortably put your fingers down, especially the pinky. So there are three different types of setup that might change your perspective a little bit. Okay, so let's get started. So let's talk about the roll of the thumb. The roll of the thumb, there are several ways to think about it. One of them is that it could be a guide. So sometimes between first and fourth position, thumb is in a way more so a guide that helps you shift between these positions. Then I would say the roll of the thumb kind of changes when you go up into a higher position past the fourth position. And that becomes in a way more of a support roll for the thumb to help the fingers in a way be able to hit those higher spots because the thumb becomes a support roll. Yeah, and the thumb in a way should always be relaxed, should never be squeezing. It should never be locked, feeling like stuck. You know, even though you might only use one type of setup for most of your playing, you should definitely not feel like the thumb is just stuck there and never ever moves in a sense. You know, by that I basically mean like, you know, just because it's not actually moving, it shouldn't feel static. It shouldn't feel like it doesn't have any, you know, liveliness in it. So let's get into it now. The three different setups. So the first one is the most basic one. This one is something that most of you probably have been taught or have learned at some point. And this one is basically the thumb is right next to your first finger here. Okay, if you just shake your hand and you bring it up, the thumb is most likely going to be next to that one without even doing anything. So you can go ahead and get your violin viola if you would like to try this with me. Shake off your hand and then bring it up. And if you have tapes, this would be the first tape. Okay, if you don't, this is just first position. Thumb is right by that first position. Okay, this is the most setup, most natural, or the most, I would say, common setup. Okay, but it gets tricky, so try to put 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you're struggling on the 4, there are a couple things to first note. If you know, maybe you're struggling because you are squeezing your thumb. So first thing I would check is if you're squeezing your thumb or not. A quick way to check is just tap and also wiggle around. Those are good ways to check if you are squeezing even when you're putting the fourth finger down. Okay. All right, so that's the first and foremost common setup. Now, if you're struggling on pinky, that's okay, because now we're going to talk about the second part. So part 2, the thumb is pointing away. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. If you just bring your palm hand up and have the palm face you. Okay, and I'm going to ask you to rotate your whole arm a little bit so that the thumb moves away and the pinky moves towards you. Okay, so rotate your arm a little bit, just a little bit will do. So you see the thumb is moving away and the pinky is moving towards you. This gives the pinky a little bit more space to work with. And that is the idea of this exercise here. So rotate slightly. For those of you that might struggle with the pinky, rotate slightly and go and put 1, 2, 3, 4 down. Now your thumb in this case, in this instance, should look something like this. Should be pointing away. The first setup is like this, and this would be more the second setup. Okay, so rotating slightly. Now, if you can do this and you're already feeling much more comfortable with the pinky and you know it feels great, then this would be a good setup for you. Okay, But if it still doesn't feel comfortable, there's one more setup we can go through. All right. So now, the third setup. The third setup requires an extremely relaxed thumb because it does move a little bit naturally. So the idea here is because some people have smaller hands, the fingers, especially when you go like 3 and 4, they're harder to reach. So the idea is that you move your hand or your whole arm basically a little bit higher as you put the 1, 2, 3, 4. And while you're going up, your thumb also goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and the thumb is basically by that second finger as you go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then your thumb is right there. So let's do this together. So you'll basically start with your thumb in a regular position by the first finger, and you're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, by the time you get to the fourth finger, your thumb is somewhere around the second finger, either in between the 1 and 2 or right on the 2, not higher than the 2. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see my little thumb sticking out right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, like so. And then same thing on the way down, just opposite. 4, 3, 2, 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. So there's this natural movement in the left hand. And by bringing your arm closer to you, that makes the pinky a little bit more relaxed, capable of being able to put down without feeling stretched. Now, this movement, however, I would say probably takes a little bit more time to develop and understand the idea. So you're going to have to practice the exercise of 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, and do that every day for probably a couple weeks until you feel more natural and accustomed to that feeling. Most of us would just put our thumb there and not move it, right? It would just be there. So this setup right here would require a little bit more time. Now, let's get into some tips and suggestions for you regarding the thumb. So once again, the thumb should never be squeezing, and the thumb should, in a way, even though if you're not moving it, it should feel like it's got a lot of space, a lot of room, a lot of freedom. You might not be moving it, but that's okay. It should still feel relaxed and open. Okay. Another tip is that from player to player, thumb is very personalized. So just because I use something or somebody else use something doesn't mean that's the way for you. Depending on your hand size and shape, everything comes to it for your final setup that works for you. Okay. And a couple more things. Sometimes players have different setups between different positions or different fingers, and so that's something to understand. Like sometimes people in first position, they like to have the thumb more pointed back, but then by the time they get to third position, they like to have their thumb more next to the 1 or the 2. And I've seen that a lot. It's just something that works for you. If you find it and works well, I would leave it alone. Okay. Of course, if it's getting in the way of performing comfortably on that left hand and to be able to play it with good finger articulation, good intonation, things like that, then maybe it's something to look into to kind of make it more stable. Now, for violin players, generally speaking, you would probably be using 1 or 2. Now, I'm not saying you cannot use the third setup. This is simply something that I've noticed just from teaching the students as well as watching players play. This is something that I notice more is that the thumb generally don't move all that much for violin players. So 1 or 2 usually will work. For viola players, if you have very big hands, you're very lucky, and first one will work great for you. But that's not true for a lot of people. So the second and the third is usually more used amongst the violas. So try different ways out, spend some time on them, Okay, practice scales, put in your piece, put in perspective, see what works for you. And sometimes you might notice, if you're more advanced and you try to do techniques like vibrato or double stops, you actually might notice uh, a different setup will work a little bit better. Um, okay, and one more reminder, do not squeeze the thumb. Keep it relaxed. Okay, so that's it for this video. Hope it has helped you or give you a different perspective. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you would like, to be notified in the future. And also drop any comments down below. Which thumb position do you use? Let me know in the comments below. Or is there anything that has changed your playing? Okay. All right. Until then, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.